your host, Dominic Ravita, along with my co-host, Maria Silverhart. Hi, everyone. We've got a great program. We're going to spend about 30 minutes giving you some updates, and we have quite a few. We have a community developer as guest, Charlie Joseph. He'll be joining us shortly. And we have some updates from yesterday's product launch event. But before we get into those things, and Akmal Chowdhury, our developer advocate, is joining us to give us some updates on some talks that he's given and some conversations in the community. But before we do that, Maria, let's maybe jump into the community and forum updates.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Silverhart, and you may have seen me answering questions around our discourse forum in your forum inbox as the community lead. But today I'm going to go over some announcements and highlights and spotlights. So let's get into it. First up, a few reminders. I'm just going to remind everyone about the community spaces that are available. You can find out more on the Developer Hub. And here's a nice mock-up of that. And we also have the GitHub SingleStore Labs, which you can also find great repos there and tribute. And we also have the YouTube videos on our YouTube channel. Lastly, just a reminder to go to us, because on our forums, the community is there answering questions for each other and supporting each other and collaborating. And in the form of some badges that we are giving out for different earned things. There's many badges, but just to name a few, we'll be highlighting today: completing your profile, posting your intro, questions, feedbacks, articles, any collaborations, liking things and commenting on other people's posts, as well as answering other members, using your emojis and flagging spam. So any of these things, activities that you do on the forum, completing the tutorial certifications, the amount of time that you spend on the forum, and elevating your trust level will all bring up your points there. And in upcoming developments for the forum, we want you to stay tuned, because we'll be announcing some swag giveaways and prizes in the future for community projects, any kind of technical articles or collaborations and contributions. So if you have any additional ideas for prizes or for any of the goodies that we can incorporate into the community, we love to hear feedback. So please take the moment to give us that feedback, and our community will be listening for those things. So they're still in the works, but more details to come. So now I'm going to move on to our shout outs.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry if you forget a little bit of lag.
Go ahead. Yeah. Let's hear about the new members.
Go forward with our members. The 5 members that we want to highlight this month. We have Swatik from RightSense AI. We have Krishna from Canva. We have Jaruj from Data Breakers, Akib from Synergy Digital, and Sentil from LiveRamp. We also want to congratulate those that are earning Trust Level 1 badges, and that is Rivka from Triple Whale, Vivek from Morgan Stanley, Pi Symbol, Swoma from TCS, and Mern from Palo Alto Networks. Congratulations, guys. We also have our 1-year anniversaries. They are Valdir from Telefonica, J.K. Rice, M. Saeed from Complete Success Solutions, Nigel from IBM, and Vic from EOG Resources. I just have 3 more shout outs, and I just wanted to shout out Ken for receiving his certification for completing the new tutorial, the new user tutorial. So thanks so much, Ken, for that. Congratulations. And our user of the month, who's really been really active on our forums, is Erica Anderson. She has had a lot of questions and given great feedback. So thank you so much for that, Erica. And our most interesting introduction this month was Albert from Nucleus Security. So great participation there in our forums and encouraging engagement. And we thank you all for all that you do. Our last section here about forum questions. We have a couple forum questions that have been really interesting. So if you take a few minutes to read into them, I think I'm going to try to put them up on the screen, but forgive me if it is not coming through clearly. But if you want to be part of these conversations or have any questions dealing with these issues, I'm sure a lot of people can be receiving some kind of or ideas if they have issues in this area. And there are just 5 ones that I want to point out, even though there's tons of questions and discussion on the forum. But I thought some of the ones that will be more relevant, along with some of our engineering team who contributed their feedback to what might be most relevant this month. We have a flyaway support conversation. We have a conversation about the 256 integer type support. We have a pipeline error conversation and a conversation on data skew and upcoming issues with the upcoming developments, with the M1 Max. So I was trying to pull up the visuals here, but I'm not sure if it's working, so sorry.
That's okay. We'll share these in the show notes afterwards. And these conversations you'll see highlighted in the top of the forum there. And Charlie's going to join us to talk a little bit about Apple M1 running SingleStore on that in just a moment. So Maria, thanks very much. So let's we share a little bit of news about our product launch event yesterday. Just a packed program of 3 hours that we packed into actually 2 hours with 2 parallel tracks in the second hour. This is going to be posted to our YouTube channel. Some of it's already there. So there's so much to cover that it's too much for this program, this 30-minute call. But what we'll do is just give you a few highlights, and I'll give you one place to start that's, I think, really easy and simple. Our product manager, Micah Bhakti, summarized this in a post, which I'm sharing here, posted to the SingleStore blog. And it covers really the highlights of what's in this release. If I could just highlight 3 things here that's super, is first the introduction of workspaces. And what workspaces are a way to basically isolate compute in your SingleStore database. And the application for this is to be able to, for a single application, separate and isolate them to scale compute independently. You might also use this to as a way to do multi-tenancy in your database to separate workloads by different customers. You may do this by separating a transactional workload from an analytical workload. For instance, a financial application for the transactional side, but maybe once a month you're running reporting and you want to spin up just for a few days at the end of the month, you can spin up a separate workspace for this. So really super exciting. Next big feature is code engine powered by WASM. And if you're not familiar with WASM, it stands for WebAssembly, and it basically allows you to do what Java had promised years ago: write once, run anywhere. But in Java, WASM allows you to do that in any language. The way we're applying WASM is to push that into the engine so that you can write in C, C++, or Rust. That's available now. In the future, Python and other languages, and basically push your compute into the database. There's lots of applications for this, but one of the major things you would do is for large data analytics. It costs time and real money in the cloud to move big data around. So you can keep that data set in SingleStore and bring your machine learning, your algorithms, forecasting logic, whatever that business logic is, right to the data without having to move it out, stream it out to something like Python or R or whatever you're using for these kinds of functions. Just keep the data in the database. There's an exciting thing to share about that one of our lead engineers, Carl Sever, showed for the event, which we'll get to in just a second. The third thing is really the data API, which allows us to basically an interface that allows you to control data in SingleStore. You can connect to it rather than having, a library, a client library in Java or your language of choice. It's a API with JSON functions. And that allows you to, easily connect from front-end web frameworks, React, Laravel, etc., which is typically the major way we're doing this kind of development these days. So check out Micah's blog. But one of the most interesting things I think that the developer community will want to play with is this demonstration that Carl built. And very, I think the choice of theme is really good because it's very much like what's on people's minds now with the Webb Space Telescope. And so this demonstration is of the WASM capabilities in SingleStore, and it's called the WASM Space Program. Again, we'll share the link for this in the show notes, the description on YouTube. But this is basically an application written all in SingleStore. All of the code, all of the logic runs in WASM modules in SingleStore Code Engine, and it's running in database. And so if you go to the site, and we'll share the link again, you can see that basically it's a game that has a set of agents, spaceships, and each of these spaceships has energy, and they can basically compete and take over or inflict damage on other ships. So basically what's happening is through WASM, all of these ships are being controlled and run through SingleStore. So if we just take a quick look at it, let's first go into this. I'm looking at a universe here. I can drill in and look at a particular solar system, and you see the ships go and consume energy for each of these, and we can see stats on every one of these. So basically, it's a continuously running automated program game that auto plays and stores state on each of these things. The way that it's implemented architecturally is it uses two really key features that are introduced here in this release, which is the data API. So this is running from my browser in Chrome. It's just using this HTTP API to control every browser that connects has a connection like this. And the workspaces, we've got multiple workspaces. One is dedicated to be the read-write controller for this, and other spaces are just readers here. So I encourage you to check this game out. It's fascinating. Not only just to play with, it's really fun, but you can go and get the code for yourself on our GitHub that we showed you. Let me sort of show you where to find that on our GitHub repository. And you'll find that here in the WASM Space Program. So after you play with it, you can go and run this yourself and see how workspaces, the data API, etc., with WASM helps you to do these kinds of things in the database. So with that, I would like to bring on Akmal to talk a little bit about what's happening lately in his DevRel journey. Hi, Akmal.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Dominic.
Yeah, so tell us about some of the recent articles and content. Like, what are the conversations you're having out there with the community?
Yeah, so, COVID's been a big problem for us. I mean, not just for us, but pretty much everyone the last couple of years. Now it's great to see in-person meetups and conferences starting to happen again. I suspect the future is going to be a hybrid thing, though. I don't think we're going to get back to the days that we had before COVID, but that's great, And so I've had the opportunity to get on the road a little bit, do some presentations. Dominic, are you able to share that slide with me, or shall I do it?
Why don't you share that?
Okay, let me see if I can pull this up then. Okay, so it's a lot easier then to just show you. Okay, so that, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so since we didn't have a call last month, so this is kind of an update of things that I've been up to last month and so far this month. So if we start in the left-hand side there under the meetings column, so I've done a couple of meetups, one for the London Java community, and these are all focused around WASM, okay, which is kind of a particular interest for me. I mean, and I've been applying it to machine learning kind of problems. Not that WASM is, exclusively that. It could be pretty much anything, as Dominic alluded to and showed that wonderful demo from Carl. So LJC in London, about 7,000 plus members. This was a kind of a virtual meetup. And many years ago, I used to actually help run a local Java special interest group in London. And it was used to be based out of Sun Microsystems offices in central London. Unfortunately, over time, organization became a little bit of a problem. Some of the founders left, but LJC kind of picked it up, and it's been great because they are very active. So truly, I think WASM does hold out that promise of write once, run anywhere. That was great. And then I've done a couple of in-person meetups. So last month, South Coast in Brighton. This was a great crowd of developers focusing principally on web development. So they were kind of interested in some of these concepts as well. Some great questions there as well, which we're trying to put together an FAQ for all of this, because for many of you, it might be kind of new stuff as well. You've got things that you want to ask, and we'll do our best to try and help you. Next week, Thursday, I'll be in Southampton, again, an in-person live meetup. So if you're in and around that area, around Portsmouth, Southampton, please come along and participate, okay? So that will be starting at 7 p.m.
Any of these going to be streamed online, or are these?
Yes, so I think we have the recording already for the LJC one, Dominic, and then I'll send you the link for that so we can add that as well to the list of assets that we have, and we can share those. Apologies for the noise outside. One of the problems of living right next to the main road here, sirens and traffic. Sorry about that. So yes, I'll do that one. The other two, well, the Brighton one was not recorded, but the Southampton one might be. Okay, so again, I'll keep you updated on that one. In the middle there, the conferences. The big conference that I did last month was this Data Science Festival, which is held annually, or it used to be until COVID. So this is, again, the first time they've opened it up for in-person. And that was at CodeNode in central London. Awesome place to be. And great crowd. I think, hundreds of data scientists, machine learning engineers, principally coming along to learn. And then again, a great opportunity to discuss some of the capabilities that we have in this space in terms of providing WASM as a solution, as a way to be able to code up machine learning algorithms. And, your code and your data are in the same place. I mean, that's great. There's no data movement. So again, there is a video of that as well. It's been recorded. I have a link for that again, and I'll share that with you, Dominic, so that you can post that out as part of the assets that we provide. On the extreme right-hand side, then a couple of articles. So we had an article published on DB Engines last month. This is, again, looking at analytics, cloud-based analytics. So essentially, how can you use Apache Spark, open source, with SingleStore and something called DeepNote, which I've really come to like a lot. It's kind of Jupyter in the cloud. It's a great environment and provides many integrations. And again, showing how we can use open source technology to do analytics, and also work with one of the companies that we partner with, MindsDB, for machine learning. Another article just below there, published on DZone, that was, again, showing the capabilities of doing cloud-based analytics. So it's kind of complementary to the DB Engines article. And then just recently, I had an article published on DZone again, showing how we can install SingleStoreDB inside a virtual machine. Now, you might ask, well, that's the kind of thing my grandfather used to do. This is old hat stuff. Why aren't you using Docker? Well, absolutely. The thing is, I like to see all of the different options that we have in terms of deploying SingleStoreDB, because that provides a lot of flexibility for users. And one of the nice things I find about virtual machines is the ability to take snapshots, for example, and all sorts of other things, particularly useful when you're building demos and you're testing things out. And it's a great way to be able to test the software and to be able to build it without having to disrupt your kind of host environment too much.
So that's a great segue, actually, to introduce our guest in the community, Charlie Joseph, who is speaking of what is your preferred development environment. How do you like to run these things? Charlie is. Let me bring Charlie on stage here, and here we go. Charlie,
Hey,
welcome.
everyone.
Yeah. So Charlie has recently started using SingleStore with the free tier, and so he's done some interesting work so far. So Charlie, I'll let you sort of describe what you're doing and what you're building.
Thank you, Dominic. So yeah, I'm Charlie. I'm a Laravel developer in the community, and I'm currently using SingleStore for my game analytics platform called Analyze. Alongside my journey building Analyze, obviously with the development environment I have, using SingleStore specific functions like the time bucketing is quite useful for me, and using it locally on my Mac isn't viable at the moment due to it being Apple Silicon. And so looking around, I couldn't host SingleStore off a droplet because of the latency issues. And so I ended up having
Those who aren't familiar, like, what's a droplet?
So a droplet is like a virtual machine. So when I've been hosting, like testing out the Analyze, I wanted to make sure that I had as little latency as possible to ensure that, my queries are performant. And using a virtual machine to like external to test SingleStore just wasn't really that viable. And I originally wanted to self-host SingleStore locally, but due to having an Apple Silicon Mac, SingleStore wasn't compatible.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, because SingleStore takes advantage of the x86 instruction set and AVX2 that comes in that from Intel. So yeah, so how did you manage to get this to work?
So I looked around at various solutions, and one of the big things that I looked around and heard about was emulation, and how with the new macOS features, you'd be able to create a virtual machine, an Intel-based virtual machine, and then essentially put SingleStore onto there. And so I've written a blog post regarding how I've managed to get SingleStore working with Apple Silicon. There was a lot of steps involved, and it took me a good couple of weeks to get involved and get it working. But the integration now has meant that I can actually test SingleStore specific functions like the time bucket and stuff, which I use with an Analyze. I've now been able to do that locally, whereas before I was having to rent out a virtual machine and do my testing there, which has slowed me down quite drastically because I'll then have to push a change every time to test it out. Whereas now I can use it locally on my laptop, and it's been quite convenient.
So what's the performance like? I mean, are you finding a big hit in that?
The performance at the moment it's had a slight impact, but I know that with the new macOS version that's going to be coming out soon, you'll be able to run your normal native ARM-based operating system. So such as, for example, Debian, you'll be able to run a Apple Silicon version of that and then use SingleStore like you would, but only emulate the SingleStore process. Whereas in this current blog post that I've written, you have to use ARM-based for everything. But in the new one, you'll be able to just emulate the SingleStore process. So it's looking like the performance will be even better.
Oh, fantastic. So how do people, if people want to try this themselves, other developers, how do they, obviously go to your article, we'll share this in the show notes, but do you have a GitHub repo or something like that shares the bits?
So currently it's all through here, but if I go down on a link, so there's an app that you'll need called UTM, which is the emulation Mac that supports Apple Silicon. Essentially, it just involves coding this, which is all linked on this article, the Debian ISO for this, which you can download here, and then essentially it's just following the steps here, which if I do a slow scroll, you can see that there's quite a lot of steps involved, and it took me a lot of back and forth with it. So I say you've got, for example, networking, starting it up, installing Debian, and then if I go further down here, if I go down a bit further, you'll see then that we then look into port forwarding so that we can then prepare for getting our SingleStore instance. And then down here is where we actually start integrating SingleStore and installing all the packages.
Gotcha. Awesome. I should point out at this point that SingleStore doesn't currently support this, but this Charlie has, this is working and you can use it. As in the future, it's something we're looking into as to what we might be able to do on Apple Silicon, but today we don't support this. So I'll give it a caveat there. So run at your own risk.
Yeah.
But I'd like to try this myself because I'm running everything's a Mac here.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's one of those that it's still in early testing with this, so it's not something that you could specifically rely on, but it allows for those who do want to give SingleStore a go locally the shot of it. And like I say, the new macOS version that's come in should actually increase the performance running it locally, because like I say, you'll be able to run your normal native Debian install, specifically for the M1 Mac, but then you'll also be able to then just emulate SingleStore process. And I say when I've looked online, the performance has been much better with that. But like you say, it's early testing at the moment, and while it's not something that you guys specifically support yet, it just allows people to give it a shot and try it out.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah, I think the convenience and having the option to run in this manner is definitely helpful. And that said, it is your target use here is just purely for a development, non-production environment, just for your laptop or something like that, right? This is not something that you would not even, when we talk about performance, we're just talking about development experience, not really. You're not going to run
query speed,
right?
Yeah, exactly what you said. It's not meant to be benchmarked in the sense of this is what SingleStore actually is, because like I say, this is going through various simulation layers, and so this is just really for people who want to give it a shot locally without depending on a third-party virtual machine that's hosted externally. But this has been really convenient for my workflow, because where I'm using SingleStore, I'm using the self-hosted instance rather than the managed instance, mainly because I'm obviously a startup and costs do matter. So at the moment, I've had to rely on the self-hosted version, but the self-hosted version has worked amazingly well for me. And, I really can't fault it at all.
Terrific. And you mentioned droplets. So you're doing self-managed in DigitalOcean, is that right?
So I'm currently testing some things with DigitalOcean, but I'm currently using Hetzner myself. I've got a Hetzner dedicated machine, and it's worked absolutely flawlessly with this self-hosted instance. It's definitely something I'd recommend for those who are in my position where they're still a small startup, but they want to get the power of SingleStore from the get-go. And I say, we're currently around 75 million rows at the moment, and it's handling it easily.
That's awesome. So people can find you in the SingleStore forum, right?
Yeah, so I've been trying to get myself more active there. So you can follow me on the SingleStore forum. I'm also obviously on Twitter at HeyChazza, and I'm also the same handle on Twitter and GitHub.
Awesome. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your contributions to the community and sharing this with everyone today. That's about all the time that we have for today. I do want to share that we are, like I said, we're doing this as a monthly call, and next month we're slated for August 11th. We're going to bring Carl Sever, our lead engineer who developed that amazing WASM space program demonstration. Really, it's a full application, as you can see from the GitHub code up there, and he's going to walk us through how he built it. And so that's going to be a really exciting session. So until next time, thanks for using SingleStore. We appreciate everybody's contribution.
See you around the forums.